Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Jody. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks so much for making the time for the call today.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you. It's been, I don't know, it feels like ages since we've actually seen each other.
It has, and it always strikes me that we've never actually met in person, which is the strangest thing because I
Yeah,
feel like I know you so well.
yeah. Well, I'm coming out to California next summer, so hopefully although
All right.
you'll probably be in Britain then, knowing our luck.
Probably, yeah. That's pretty much how that works.
Yeah,
Well, if you're here, I will pop a bottle of wine for you.
yeah. So we'll exchange the custard creams for the Pinot Noir, yes?
There you go.
So you're looking really, really well, and it's lovely to see. It's lovely to see that you continue to thrive and blossom.
Thank you.
Mm,
Thanks. Yeah, every year has its challenges,
mm.
but things are good.
And you've been really busy
Good.
writing, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I've been. It's funny. People ask me, when they know when they hear I'm a
Mm,
writer, they say, "What do you write?" And
mm.
it's really difficult to answer that question
Yeah.
because I write for Life Without Baby. I've been working on my big project, my big book
Mm,
project that you and I have talked about for a
mm,
number of years now, and then working on my fiction as
mm,
well, which
mm,
which I just love and is just an escape from everything. So yeah,
mm,
I really love that work. So,
mm.
but it's been busy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good though. It's all
Great.
good.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll get into a bit more detail about the writing projects later, because also I guess because of the time of year, it being well, it's the end of November, but it seems that the Christmas season seems to start on Halloween now.
It does.
And
Yeah.
so later we'll be talking about both of our experiences of how to support people through it. And I was reading in, I'm not sure if it was in one of the Life Without Baby workshops, workbooks, or the Landmines book about your Christmas Santa experience and your kind of your litmus test of how you deal with Christmas to do with the Santa that comes in the street. And I think it really speaks to our experience of kind of going through a process to come to terms with
Yeah.
childlessness.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because we think about the big things
Mm,
that we have lost of our holiday experience from perhaps childhood experiences
mm,
that we wanted to pass on, and the big things of getting up Christmas morning and opening
mm,
gifts and having
mm,
children in the house. That we the things that we focus on. And so often it turns out that it's the little things and the unexpected things that catch us
yeah,
off guard.
yeah.
And I know what you're talking about is where I live in Southern California. Um, uh, there was one day where I heard all these police sirens and an announcement, and I thought, oh God, what's going on?
Mm,
So of course, being the nosy old lady that I am, I went to look and discovered that my local police department has a Santa that visits all the neighborhoods. So he's
mm-hmm,
on a sleigh, he's got a police escort, and everybody can come out, kids can come out and
mm-hmm,
have their pictures taken with him.
mm-hmm,
And that realization, that moment
mm-hmm,
of, oh my God, I can't do this. I,
mm-hmm,
I don't have, I don't get to
mm,
enjoy this.
mm,
And I just, was really blindsided by that experience.
mm,
And so, a number of years went by and I kind of avoided it. And then I had, a friend of mine who's also, my neighbor who's also childless, sort of by choice.
mm. Sort of by
She's
choice, yeah,
that
yeah,
spectrum
yeah,
where there is no kind of
yeah.
you're this or you're this. She's on that spectrum in between, and she wanted to have her picture taken with Santa, and I got to do that, and it
Mm,
was really fun. And then
mm,
finally, one year came where I went out and I watched my neighbors' children go
mm-hmm,
and have their pictures taken with Santa and
mm,
Father Christmas, and I was fine. I mean,
mm,
I was able to really enjoy it and
mm,
not feel that terrible sadness or loss or just
mm,
blindsided like I was the first time. And
mm,
so, yeah, that has been kind of my, as you said, my litmus test
mm.
each year for how am I doing? How
Yeah,
am I doing?
yeah.
And just recently, I was thinking about this just recently because there was this adorable uh, video on on Facebook or wherever of these twin babies. And I watched it and I laughed, and I went and showed it to my husband, and we watched it together and we laughed. And I thought, even 2-3 years ago, I would have seen that and just zipped right by it. I wouldn't have been able to even watch that, let alone enjoy it or share it. So
and let it touch you emotionally, kind of let it in and find it funny, because it would have been too risky to sort of emotionally feel it.
Yes. And also that moment of, oh, I'm never going to have to do that. Oh, this is okay, actually. So I mean, sometimes you don't see the change that you're going through, and you don't see the progress that you're making until you have those little markers and those little tests of, oh, you know what, actually, I'm okay.
I'm okay. That's such a great place to get to. And I guess some of the people, watching and listening to us will be at various stages on that path to it's okay. And I hope to be introducing you and your work and your books to hopefully to a new audience. So I wondered if perhaps you might tell us a little bit about your story, about how you came to be a childless woman, as much as you feel comfortable sharing.
And you know that it's interesting that I'm actually a very private person, and yet on this topic I have come to share the most.
You are so busted on this particular topic.
And it's so not my personality, but what I've got from that, which we can also talk about later, is this incredible feeling of community and belonging and support. So but I am really actually a private person that doesn't really talk about
I'll believe you.
So I met the man that I married and wanted to have children with in my sort of early to mid 30s. And we knew immediately we wanted to have children together. He had children of his own, adult children. But we wanted to have children together. And so we set off on that journey, and soon realized that there were problems. And we assumed that the problems were his, and we were told that the problems were his. And so that was our focus. And went through all kinds of surgery and all kinds of things to get him up and running and ready to go, only to discover that the problem actually wasn't his, it was mine.
Wow. Right.
Really a big lesson in being your own health advocate, which I learned the hard way. So we shuttled around. We had a terrible experience with a fertility clinic who really got a first-hand look at this kind of production line business of fertility, and it was just so shocking to us, and we weren't mentally in a place where we thought that was the direction we were going to have to go. So we went off and looked for some alternative methods, and we did a lot of Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and just looking for these answers to a question that we didn't really know how to ask. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. It's just something wasn't working. So we did ultimately come around and discover that I had they changed the name, so I'm sorry, I threw myself off there. But basically premature ovarian failure. And so my only option would be donor eggs. And, we talked a lot about that, and just decided that it wasn't the right route for us for a lot of different reasons. And so, as many people listening have probably done, we charged off in the adoption direction, knowing for certain that was the answer to all our problems. Right. Well, not really understanding, firstly, the emotional stress that's involved with that, and also the fact that we had not really mourned this loss of biological children. I mean, just emotionally, we weren't ready to step into that arena. So, we took a little time off, which came a little more time off, and then went through this cycle that I'm sure is familiar to so many people of, okay, we can't do this anymore. Let's move on and figure out. And then, you read an article, you hear a miracle story, you find another book, you see this doctor advertising the seminar, and back you go. And that, that happened several times until ultimately we just both said we
Yeah.
can't do this anymore. We just can't.
Mm.
So, then from there it was like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Now what do we do? And I had been writing about it at this point, which really helped. I'm really trying to find the humor in this story. And
Had you been blogging publicly, or was that private writing?
that was private writing. It was private writing. And then I started to write more and then realized that I had a book, but I didn't have an ending for my book. So I was writing the book, and I really didn't know what the ending was going to be, except I wanted it to be, I assumed it was going to be the happy ending, the kind of Hollywood happy ending
One of those
the
miracle
Miracle
babies.
Baby.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
because who doesn't love those books,
Yeah.
right? And how inspiring would that be? That don't give up, it could happen to you story.
Yeah.
Great. And then finally realized, oh no, I know what the ending to my story needs to be. It needs to be that I get off this crazy train, which it was all consuming, and figure out how to come to terms with this. And I really didn't know. I just felt very isolated, didn't know where to go for help, didn't know I needed help. And so that's when I first started taking my writing a little more public, and started a blog and started writing about this. And for a long time, just really it was just an extension of my diary, and writing into this black hole. And then suddenly people started showing up and saying, oh, me too.
Me too.
And just feeling like, oh gosh, because you feel like you're the only person in the world that this has ever happened to. And then you start finding these people that understand. So so that was kind of my story. And but the truth is that I really had no idea how to get through this. I had no idea of this concept of grief in this in this particular situation. I understand what happened when when you lose somebody, and I understand how you work through that grief process, but so much that I didn't understand, that I've learned through my own experience and through talking to other people, and seeing myself in them and saying, oh yeah, this is a huge loss. I mean, this is grief that I'm feeling, this complete lack of interest in anything, and this complete confusion about the future, and these outbursts of sadness, unexpected meltdowns in public. It's grief. It's grief, and I'm entitled to that grief because I've lost something.
I didn't know it was grief, and and so many women who are kind of a part of the Gateway Women community, or come to my workshops or read my stuff, it's like are in the same situation that you and I were. I had no idea. I mean, it never occurred to me, and moreover, no therapeutic professional ever suggested it was grief. So, the blindness is also within the therapeutic, no therapist, no one ever said anything about it.
Yeah. And I think that stems from just a real lack of understanding about this situation.
Yeah.
That, friends and family, even your most supportive, friends and family, they really don't understand what that's like.
Yeah.
And you're not in a position when your emotions are shredded to explain to somebody what it's like to have lost something that you never had.
Yeah.
But it is.
And how devastating it is also that not only have we lost it, but that sense that our loss is unrecognized and unvalued, and yet it's devastating to us.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much more tied up into it than not being able to have a baby or not being a parent. I mean, that's just like that's the ground level.
That's the entry level, isn't it?
That's the entry level. Yeah. And just that loss of identity and just feeling really isolated among your own family and friends, and just feeling like you don't fit in wherever you go. And then there's just, like I said, that we were talking about the complete lack of understanding of your own person and your own emotions, and like, who is this crazy person that's now inhabiting my body? Where did Lisa go, and who's this lunatic?
I kind of thought maybe this is what middle age feels like. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I'm just going to be this kind of grumpy, pessimistic, emotionally fragile, sort of
Yes.
Grinch,
Yes. Yes.
maybe this is it. Maybe this is why people have midlife crises. I thought, my God, maybe this is my new personality. I mean, it was so good to find out it was grief, because then it was like, number one, it was like, I'm not going crazy.
Right.
And number
Right.
two, one day, somehow, this will be over. I
Yeah.
didn't know how, but I knew that grief is something
Something that,
that
yeah.
ends. I mean, that was, I didn't really understand how, or even really quite believe it would be possible somehow. But there was a bit of hope that, yeah, maybe I could
Yeah.
get some of
It would
Jody
be.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, seeing two things of the old Lisa, which was compassion for somebody
Mm,
else, having been so focused on my own
yeah.
needs and hurt, to that moment when I realized, I'm still there, and I have perhaps even more compassion
Mm,
for others than I did before.
mm,
And then knowing that I still had a sense of humor, and that, I
yeah.
smiled.
Yeah.
I could smile and laugh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
great, I'm back. um and not that it's like I'm cured,
Mm,
that's all behind me now, because it's not. You carry it with you. It's
yeah.
always, it's like a little part of you. I just think, the little gingerbread men,
Mm,
cookie cutters. I just think there's always one of those that's kind of been imprinted on my heart, and
yeah.
there will always be a little child-shaped indentation in
Mm,
me that'll go with me. And it doesn't. I'm not in tears. I don't break
mm,
down. I'm not,
mm,
sad in this dark place. But
mm.
it's there. It's always there, and it's
It's a
okay.
it's a part of
Okay.
us, isn't
Yeah,
it? And in a way,
it is.
it feels to me like a really precious part of me. I wouldn't want it taken away from me.
Yeah.
It's my children gave that to me, that tender spot. It's like it's as I think I'm a more compassionate person than I was before.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
but rather like there was a boyfriend I had in my early 20s who died young, um, of a brain tumor. And many years later, I was walking down a street in the city of London, the financial district, and I kind of thought, this looks familiar. I never go to that part of town. Sort of writers and psychotherapists generally aren't needed over there. Well, they are, but you know what I
Well,
mean.
they are, but they're not welcome. Yeah.
we don't get office space. Let's just say that. And I just thought something's familiar about this street, and I looked up at the street name, and I realised it was the street that he used to work on. And it just brought back all of the memories of him. And if I see someone who has the same shade, very distinctive shade of colour of hair that he has, I kind of memories of him come back, and they come back with grief, but they also come back with love.
Mm,
And I'm like, that grief, what's left is the memory of the love that we had for each other. And I feel
yeah.
like that about the grief that I have from not having children. It's because I loved them.
Yeah.
I just didn't meet
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
process of going through my grief has been so transformational, because it's a tough process, and a lot of, I feel in some ways that whatever wasn't needed for the onward journey of life, my plan B, as I call it, kind of got burnt away. Sort
Mm.
of relationships, work, friendships, character qualities. It's like I feel like I kind of walked through the fire and came
Mhm.
out the other side with what's needed.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, that you do gain some clarity, and I
Mm,
think, along with that, I think sometimes we feel that we're not going to be parents. We
mm,
have to do this major life overhaul, and really, you
yeah.
have to do something big in the world, something
Mm,
important. And I think that's not true. And
mm,
if that's what you want to do,
mm,
that's fine. But I think for so many of us, it's a matter of just a little adjustment,
mm,
of kind of a, like you say, a peeling back of what you're not, and going back to the core of who you are,
mm,
and trying to look for those things that used to give you joy and
mm,
used to give you passion, before you got kind of
mm,
bogged down with all the things that you're not.
mm.
And so, yeah, I love that image of you just kind of walking through the fire, and all this
I've got a whole Game of Thrones going on in my head thing now. Do you know what I mean? When she goes into the fire with her eggs and comes out in the buff with 2 dragons. It's 3 dragons. That's the image I've got. But that's a whole other movie. We'll do that another time. So that was a great Game of Thrones analogy. That's a whole different movie, a whole different interview. So I guess it feels quite natural. We've been talking really about moving into what I think of as plan B. And, I think we share that thing that it doesn't have to be a big deal. But I think it's often part of the process we go through, that we think we need to do that.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things I feel about parenting is that so many people go into it automatically. It's just an assumption. And I think when it doesn't come easily, you get that opportunity to take a step back and really look at who you are and what you want. And then, when it doesn't work out, you have the opportunity. You're not on that prescribed path.
So I guess we've been talking a bit how a lot of people, feel the need for quite a big plan B. Something huge in the world that, strange enough, is, if we were mothers, we kind of wouldn't necessarily be thinking about that. But also, mums might have big plans too. It's like, it would be reductive of us to think that it's only childless women who have to think like that. So I guess, how is your plan B shaping up, which I guess is really, your life? And what's happening? What are your projects?
It's interesting that I also went through that phase of feeling like I needed to make a big overhaul, a big life change, and considered a lot of possibilities. Going back to going to medical school, for example, or completely retraining. A big life change, and I think that was all part of the kind of the grief and sorting out process, and like you say, discarding
and kind of wanting a solid identity. So people could say, well, I'm a doctor. You know what I mean? Just that thing of like, well, what am I?
Yeah, and just that, not kind of deflecting that question about, well, having children. Well, no, I'm a doctor. So, oh, well, that's, it's kind of like, oh, well, you're excused then.
Yeah.
But I really, really what's happened for me is more of the same, more of, obviously life without baby would never have happened had I not had this experience. So that was definitely an unforeseen turn in my life plans. But what I'm really enjoying is this newfound freedom. I'm really able to focus on the things that are important to me. I'm focusing on my writing. I'm able to do that. We learned to sail this year, which was a big adventure. So, I have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
My mother is in her 80s and she's still in the UK. So she's on the other side of the world. And she's had a couple of, not life-threatening health issues, but some that required her to have some help. And I've been able to go and stay with her for extended periods of time and be with her to go to hospital appointments and that kind of thing. And I'm really appreciative of that. So I'm really seeing the advantages of my freedom.
Yeah.
Mr. Fabulous, my husband, is several years older than me, and he's at the point where he's starting to look forward and think about retirement and what that might look like for him. And I work for myself as well, so I'm in a different situation, but we are really looking at some incredible freedom. We could actually live anywhere we wanted.
Yeah.
And that that's kind of exciting. There is nothing to tie us to the place we currently live.
It's lovely to know that intellectually, but also to be able to feel the excitement about that opportunity again. Because we didn't choose that life, it chose us. It's taken me a long time to feel comfortable with and excited about my freedom again. And when people say, oh, but you've got your freedom, I'd be just like, you can have it.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
But now I really love it, and I guard it quite preciously.
Yeah. And things that used to be really important to me,
Mm,
for example, owning a home
mm,
and, getting to that point where we rent. So
mm,
getting to the point where we had a down payment, which in
mm.
California is, monumental in order
Yeah,
to be able to do that
yeah.
and own a piece of property. And now that's not important at all.
Mm,
In fact, don't necessarily want to put down roots anywhere because I like the idea that
mm,
if my husband came home tonight and said, you know what? I think I want to move to South America and say,
mhm.
okay, let me just wrap up a couple of things and put some
Yeah,
things in storage and
yeah,
alert a few people that
yeah.
where I'm going to be and let's go. And
Mm,
we could actually do that.
mm.
I mean, it's not obviously not quite as simple. I'm simplifying the whole thing, but
But we could entertain the possibility and kind of, if we wanted to go for it, actually go for it.
yeah,
You know.
it's very liberating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you on that one. And when my psychotherapy training is completely finished, that will be another piece of liberation for me. So,
Mm,
and then I'm hoping also to do a bit more traveling and be
yeah.
a bit more, as they say it now, location independent.
Oh, very nice.
That's the phrase for entrepreneurs who move around a lot now. I over the last couple of years, it feels like I've been reading the Life Without Baby workbook series as it's been coming out, and
Yeah.
really enjoying them and recommending them. And and it was interesting you said before that writing them, you've discovered more about your own process as well. And I had that feeling when I wrote Rocking the Life Unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I was actually going through all that, like
Mm,
we discussed earlier, I really didn't understand it, but
mm,
but I didn't understand myself. But when I actually came to put what I had learned from
mm,
my own experience and from talking to other people as
yeah.
well, and learned so much from other people, those kind of light bulb moments of, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is grief, this is what I'm dealing
Hmm.
with. And then so I really, for my own, I hate to use the word closure because it just sounds like everything's finished and done and
Mm,
wrapped up and we can all go
mm,
home, and it's not that way at all. But for my own kind of closure,
mm.
um, I wanted to put everything that I'd learned into a container
Yeah.
for other people.
Yeah.
I've got kind of blog posts all over the place and
Mm,
writing all over the place, but I wanted to contain that.
mm,
But it was really interesting, the process of writing that, but
mm,
also now I'm putting all four books together into one volume because
mhm.
a lot of people want a print book, and for a
Yeah.
60-page ebook,
Mm,
that doesn't work. So I'm putting it all together as a print book, and I've been editing this week.
yeah.
Um, and I have to say, I'm really pleased with how useful my book has been to me.
Yes. Yeah.
This week, and not just in this process. We had a loss in the family recently, and so rereading the section about
Mm,
grief and really
mm,
understanding
mm,
this is what's going on here.
mm,
We're getting ready to come up to the holidays. I've been reading about dealing with social situations
mm,
and really understanding myself. In the section, I have a section about self-care, which is something
mm,
that we really neglect. And
mm,
one of the things in there was treating yourself as you would if you were leaving, your beloved pet
mm.
with a house sitter. And you would come up with a self-care list, like,
Yeah.
this is what my pet needs to be well taken care of.
Yeah.
And actually, especially at this time of year when everything is so crazy, is
Mm,
tacking up that little list of, like, this
yeah.
is my self-care list. I
Yeah.
need fruits and vegetables. I need exercise. I need
Hmm.
some reading time. I need some quiet time. I need some time away from my screen.
Yeah.
What is it that you actually need to
Hmm.
keep yourself healthy and happy and alive?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm very encouraged to find that what I wrote is useful to me.
I get that sometimes when I just think, oh, I read it and I think, oh, this is quite good.
Yeah.
She makes some good
You
points.
forget. She does. And you forget,
Yeah.
you document all that. And then
Yeah.
when you read it and think, oh, yeah,
Mm,
we're the worst culprits for not
mm,
paying attention to our own lessons. We have great advice for
mm.
everybody else, all of which we completely ignore for ourselves.
Well, I had the experience this summer of doing, working on the revised edition of my book, and also weaving in the extracts from case studies with 24 women and 2 men from around the world that I've woven into it. And I revisited every paragraph, you know what I mean, and updated it. And it made me realize how much I've learnt, as you say, not just in my own process, but, you know, from the privilege of hearing the stories and experiences of, you know, hundreds of women that I've worked with personally, and you and I both thousands online. You know, the richness of our stories, and yeah, some of the advice I give is it's good, but I also realize that some of it I have integrated it into how I behave. You know, when I wrote that book 3 years ago, that was kind of cutting edge for me, that thinking. And now it's like, you know, my self-care is much better. My self-talk is much better, particularly, you know, what I call in the book the inner bitch. I mean, she's pretty fully house trained now. You know, I'm very, you know, I'm really kind to myself in the way I am to other people. And so, although some things I saw, yeah, I don't do that, I also had a chance to go, actually, I'm quite good at that now. Putting all 4 of them together, when will that be done? That's a labour of love.
That is going to be, it's going to be actually out and available in the spring of next year. So February or early March. I don't have a firm date yet, but very excited to get this out. And it's, you know, it's sometimes it's not kind of this miracle of genius of information. But a lot of the time it's some basic stuff that when you are in the thick of trying to get through this mess, you can't see it.
Yeah.
And you just having somebody to tell you it's okay to grieve. What you're feeling is normal. You know,
what you're feeling is normal. I mean, it's just so good to hear that when you feel that nothing in life makes sense anymore. And actually that sort of brings me on to what is normal around dealing with the holidays, because one of the things I really love about what you write in your holiday survival, which is both in the what do you call your book, your coping with Christmas book? Is it Holiday Survival Kit?
A holiday companion.
That's it.
The holiday companion.
Yes, here we are, readers. Holiday companion. I have it on my trusty Kindle. Is about kind of being prepared. You know, we often think, well, it'll be different this year. And the chance, and it will be.
It will be different.
But it's good to prepare for the things to presume that some of the things might not be.
Yeah. And I think that, I'm a big believer in being good to yourself, especially, you know, when you're really in those early stages and everything's so raw, sort of going in expecting that there are going to be triggers left, right, and center, and it is going to be hard, and being a little bit selfish, which is so hard for many of us to do. But realizing, you know, if you decide to sit it out, it's okay. This year, it's okay.
I think that's the thing. It's that permission to kind of actually, you know, you write in your book, you know, if someone you loved had just died, you know, you wouldn't expect yourself to kind of just go through Christmas as normal. You know, you would, you know, as you know, you wouldn't send cards that year. You know, there are a lot of things you might not do, and you would give yourself permission to not do them. And we too are going through a devastating loss.
Exactly. And it's just for now. It's not forever. You're not checking out forever. It's just for now. And the people who love you will deal with it, and by next year they'll forget. And if they don't, you know, you were probably going to have some other issue with that person at some point anyway.
Yes.
So
yes, every family's got one of those. Yeah.
And I think that the hard part, that certainly for me, as I was going through this, is that, you know, there were the early Christmases where we decided to check out. We just said, we're not going to do it. We didn't get a tree. We didn't make plans. And it was awful. It was really awful. But at the same time, trying to force yourself into that festive spirit when you're sad. It's very hard to do. So I think one of the hardest things was giving up on, you know, my ideal of what Christmas should be, because it was clear to me, you know, I live 6,000 miles away from my family. I have no children. I live in a, you know, a warm climate where I'm not going to get snow. I'm not going to get Christmas carolers at my door. There are so many things that are just not part of what I want for my Christmas celebration. So for me, it was kind of filtering through those and deciding what I actually want my celebration to be. One of the things we've done a couple of years is we've changed our celebration to Christmas Eve and gone out for a nice dinner, civilized sit-down dinner on Christmas Eve. And then we can usually find a sushi or a Chinese restaurant open on Christmas Day. And that's our tradition. We get a tree. We've gone away several years, just the two of us. We're going away for Christmas this year and headed out of town. And those have been some of the best Christmases we've had, where it's just been the two of us. We've had a nice dinner. We've been ice skating. We've been to the zoo and done things that make us happy. And then,
I think creating our own traditions. Yeah, there we are. Yeah. 6,000 miles away from each other, but we're on the same wavelength there. Yeah.
We are. Yeah. We are. And part of the thing of having children is, you are obligated to celebrate in a certain way. And when you don't have children, back to that freedom again, you get to do it kind of as you want and making your own traditions as they suit you.
I mean, my sort of experience of coming to terms with my childlessness also involved the end of my marriage, and then I had a couple of relationships afterwards, but that didn't work out, and I've now been sort of single for 5 years, and discovered that I'm really happy, that way. It's a new experience for me, and it's been the most creative and most peaceful time of my life. But working out what Christmas means as a single childless woman is kind of also really complicated, because there isn't that our Christmas feeling. And I went through the kind of just let's have a 0 for Christmas, Christmas. But last year and the year before were kind of, I definitely felt more in the spirit. And last year, for the first time, living by myself, just me and the famous cat who just made an appearance. We've edited that one out, folks.
Was in the bloopers.
I got a really lovely tree, just a little one, and just for me. Actually, it wasn't just for me; it was just for me and the cat. And I decorated it, and it was actually really, really special. And then I got cards from all over the world from women who were in the Gateway Women community. We did a kind of card exchange thing, which was lovely. So I got, cards from Australia and New Zealand and South Africa, as well as down the road. And they were all around my Christmas tree, as well as the ones from friends and family. And I felt that it didn't matter that nobody in the world saw that tree except me, because I was worth a tree. It was something about, actually this is my Christmas and I'm worth a tree. And actually it was very symbolic, that it was a definite sense of making peace with yet another part of the story. That I don't have to do it for someone else or for a couple, but I get to have Christmas too.
Yeah, in your own way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I spent it with family and friends, and that was lovely. But there was something very symbolic about having that tree in my little apartment just for me and the cat.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And we've done a similar thing in the last couple of years. But I think it's those early years that are really difficult, and just kind of being prepared for that emotional impact. And figuring out what finding that balance between what you want to do to be festive and what you're obligated to do and what you can say no to.
And what you can cope with.
Yeah, and what you can cope with. Yeah. And then, I think it's okay to say no to things. If you're going to an event for somebody else and you think, well, I have to go for them. But if you're going to go and not be able to participate, or you're going to end up locked in their bathroom, going through their Kleenex, are you going to be a good guest? And so I think giving yourself permission to say no to some things is really important. And then if you do have to go, kind of going in with a game plan,
I think that's really important. It's like you said, arrive late, leave early, have an exit plan. These are
yeah,
these are
like
really crucial.
have an ally if you know there's an ally who
Mm,
understands, knowing who's going to be there. If you know that that cousin of yours who always says something obnoxious is going to be there, how are you going to deal with that?
yeah.
I mean, are you going to avoid that person? Do you have an answer? And then if you've got family and friends who ask those questions, so, when are you going to,
Yeah.
or if you've got that newlywed relatives
Mm,
who could spring a
mm,
surprise pregnancy announcement,
mm,
or if you're at an event with people that you don't know where you're going to be meeting new people and they're going to
mm,
be asking those questions. So do you have kids? Which is, it's just an icebreaker.
yeah.
We take it so personal and it's
Hmm.
so intrusive and personal, but in fact, it's just an icebreaker question. So, going in with topics that you do want to talk about.
Mm,
So, if you want to talk about holiday plans, if you want to talk about something that's going on in the
mm,
world, if you want to talk about, if so you made travel plans for next year
yeah.
yet? You can take control of the conversations,
Mm.
and kind of being ready with your stock answers for
I think that's really
what you're
important.
going to say when
Yeah.
somebody asks.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a flippant and funny
Mm-hmm.
answer, or do you want to tell them the truth, or do you want to find
Mm,
somewhere in between?
mm.
And just like you said earlier, just kind of going in expecting that it's all going to be okay it's just not a good tactic.
Yeah.
It's just not. And
And
it
also,
feels like
it's Christmas.
social gymnastics, but it
Yeah,
is social
it
gymnastics. And
is.
it's a damn sight easier than trying to re-educate people right now, you
And
know?
also, that's not, that re education piece is not something to be done at a Christmas party. That's the thing,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I choose my moments for that these days.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I have a variety of answers.
Yeah.
And depending on whether I think it would be helpful and appropriate to use this as a teaching moment, as they say, often I don't, you
Often
know.
it's yeah.
And there's a
No.
great
And
line
sometimes
from,
you just have to let it go,
yeah,
just understand that it's not personal.
mm,
Somebody is coming in with their own filter, their own
mm,
point of view of the world, and their own issues, because we all have them.
yeah,
And it's not a personal attack, even though it feels like it.
yeah. There's a great line from Sharon Kaiser who says, sometimes it's not worth trying to explain yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? It's like,
Yes.
just don't go there. Just as you say, let's just let that one go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
be
Find
prepared.
somebody else to talk to.
Yes. Yeah.
I was in an event last night actually, and we were talking about some city planning
Mm.
issues that are going on, and this woman was determined to convince me that this new plan was great. And it's like, okay, you don't even live where this is happening,
Hmm.
and you don't go there. So I think instead of trying to convince you, I'm going to talk to this nice lady here
Yeah.
about the homeless problem, because
Yeah.
this is a much better
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, you certainly have to pick your moments.
And I think in the early days, as you say, that's when it's really hard because it's everywhere, and it's, as you say, whatever happened to just talking about the weather? Just like, please, just
Yeah,
stop asking me.
right,
Yeah,
right.
it is hard,
Yeah,
but it gets easier. I think that's something be important for those people watching and listening to know. It does get easier, and Christmas is the hardest time of the year. Christmas and Mother's Day, I think.
yeah, yes, they
Yeah.
are for different reasons,
Mm,
but yeah, they are. And
mm,
I think just if you need that permission slip, you just one permission slip this
yeah.
1 year to pull out, or
Mm,
fake an illness, fake the flu,
yeah.
or stomach bugs are great because you usually you can't see the symptoms of those.
Oh
It's
yeah,
you just look a little
they're
pasty.
easier to
Yeah,
fake on the
stomach,
phone.
food poisoning. Yeah, gotta go now.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it sounds horrible, but
Mm,
really, you have to protect yourself. You have to protect yourself.
yeah. Mm. Okay.
So yeah.
Well, where are you going this year? Are you staying at home or are you going abroad?
My mum is coming this
Oh,
year, so
cool.
yeah. So this year we've got our own traditions that
Mm,
we've established, but now my mom is coming with, her
mm.
expectation of a traditional Christmas. So we're going to kind of have to strike a balance between that.
Yeah.
So I think we can convince her to go out for a nice dinner on Christmas Eve, but we'll
Okay.
see.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have we've got Thanksgiving coming up next
Mm,
week. And we have a new tradition that we've established a couple of years ago with having Thanksgiving with friends.
mm-hmm,
We have one couple who have children that don't come home at Thanksgiving, they come at
mm-hmm.
Christmas. And another couple who don't have children who come up and spend it with us too. And I have a friend from the UK come in as well.
Mm.
So it's really fun.
Yeah.
It's really fun. So yeah, so it's not
That actually
traditional, but
that does sound lovely. Well, it is about
it is.
gratitude and sharing,
It
and
is.
it's your version of that, which sounds lovely. Yeah.
And I don't dread it. I
Mm,
talk to people who are like, Thanksgiving, we got family and all that stuff. And if you've
mm.
seen Home for the Holidays, I mean, I think that's a very typical gathering for a lot
Yeah.
of people. And I'm looking forward to sitting down with friends and sharing food
That sounds
and
lovely. I'm
wine.
quite glad actually we don't have Thanksgiving in the UK because it's kind of like having two Christmases. I'm quite glad we
Yeah,
don't have two Christmases to deal with. Yeah.
it's pretty relentless. From
Mm,
Halloween onwards, it is all holidays all the time.
yeah. I mean, we have November the 5th, which you don't, but that basically involves standing around eating half cooked baked potatoes in the dark and watching fireworks in the
But
rain. You know what I mean?
burning your fingers on chestnuts, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yes. So we've talked a little bit about, I guess, what's next, which is the Life Without Baby workbooks all coming together, but also you're working on a novel.
I am. I mean, fiction is the thing that I set out to write before I got sidetracked in writing about myself.
Ah,
So enough of me, enough talking about me. But yeah, I have actually just finished my first novel, and
oh, well done.
that is sitting on the pile of papers are sitting
Mm,
on a desk. Well, the electronic pile of papers are
hmm
sitting on a desk in New York now, looking for an agent and a publisher. So
hmm
that's very exciting.
And is there
Uh,
any childlessness theme or character in it, or have you gone on a big mystery adventure?
Big mystery adventure.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm actually been writing young adult fiction, which
Uh-huh.
is, you know, talk about, well, how can you write about that? Because you
Yeah.
have no experience with teenagers, except
Mm.
for that I was one from
Mm.
probably the age of, 6 years old. I was a teenage girl. So
Mm.
I had lots of experience.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I'm not yet willing to say that I don't want to write about this
Mm.
topic in
Mm.
fiction because I think that it needs it. I think
Mm.
that this topic needs a heroic
Yeah.
fictional character.
We need the big
Um,
no-mo novel. We kind of need
we
it.
need the big Nomo novel.
And it hasn't happened yet. And I'm
It
writing a
has,
novel as well, but I'm not sure that it will be the big no-mo
yeah.
novel. Yeah.
And I think for me, I don't necessarily. I mean, my experience, is with infertility, and
Mm.
I don't really want to write more about that
Mm.
infertility because why would I fictionalize it when the truth
Mm.
is much more dramatic?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I think there, I think that there's room for a yes, a Nomo character to
Mm.
have a heroic journey and not
Mm.
come out with a baby at the end.
For that not to be the way the story ends, which
Yes,
and also for
yeah,
that to start to become normalized. I mean, I love reading fiction where the characters, don't have children, and that either is or isn't part of the story. But it's just so nice to be
so
taken in another direction. I really enjoyed Elizabeth Gilbert's not the theory of everything. It's gone. Elizabeth
now you said
Gilbert's The
that.
Signature of All Things,
Signature of all things. Yeah.
which has a wonderful central character who
Mhm.
turns out, to remain a spinster, and has the most extraordinary life. And the fact that she is a spinster and doesn't have children is part of the story, but it's not the story.
It's not the story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
fantastic. It's
yeah.
it's how I
And
feel
there,
about my childlessness now, which is it's part of who I am, but it's not who I am. For
yes,
many years I felt, I'm Jody, I'm childless.
yeah.
And
Stand
now, yeah, and
identity.
now I'm Jody, and one of the things that has made me who I am is that I really wanted to have children and it wasn't possible, but it's not my identity anymore.
Yeah.
Which is,
it's a wonderful place to
I
be.
never kind of expected that. That's come as a really lovely surprise. Yeah. Oh, you too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I have to kind of
Yeah.
pinch myself because I think, really?
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. And occasionally this hasn't happened to me for a long time, but occasionally you will run up against somebody who said, well, you kind of really wanted it that much if you've got to this point of coping. Well, firstly, if you were willing to give up on that dream at all, you kind of wanted it. And now the fact that you're okay with not having children means you didn't really want them in the first place.
Well,
So
I was
that's the
that
point at which I roll up my sleeves
Yeah.
and say, all right, talk about teachable moments, have a seat.
Yes.
So
I was that person for myself, actually. I went through, I found it very hard to accept that it was possible to move on because I really questioned what that meant about my desire. I thought, well, if I can get over it, then maybe I never really wanted it. So I went through it. I've decided it was for me. It's the sort of childless version of survivor's guilt. There was part of me that felt really uncomfortable about being okay again.
Yeah. And about being resilient, that you can get through this. And you're right, being a survivor.
Yeah. Well, it's we've talked about a lot already on our call, but I kind of put, what do you find the most challenging aspect of being a not mother? And what's the most liberating? We talked about freedom.
Yeah, the definitely most liberating is that not being tied to geographically anymore, and really being able to create whatever I want in my life within my capabilities. And I think the most challenging thing still, and I really had to, you sent me some your questions, and that was one of them. I really had to think about that. And I think still is sometimes finding myself in conversations with mothers and still feeling dismissed.
Yeah.
That what I have to either that what I have to say about it isn't important, or that I'm just not, that clearly this conversation is not something that I'm wanting to be involved in.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay, because there are plenty of other topics that I have to talk about. But that's still sometimes, I'm thinking of upcoming events where I know that the people there are predominantly women who have children, and that's not going to be the whole topic of the whole evening. But at some point, the topic will turn to their children, and I will have less to contribute, and I would say nothing but less to contribute in that moment of we're talking about that topic.
It's that bit.
Okay,
it's that bit of the evening.
Yeah, and that's okay. And I don't have a set answer for how I handle those, and sometimes I jump in anyway, and sometimes I just sit back and let the conversation go, or sometimes I pick that moment to go refill everybody's glasses. So I have a little kind of arsenal of tactics for dealing with that.
And
some
those
of the
are
things
written
that
up.
used to be really hard are not anymore.
Ditto. And I still find that I can be taken. It's often a little thing that can trigger what I call a griefy moment. And it might be a new aspect of my loss I hadn't quite considered before. I have an adorable new goddaughter in my life, and I ordered her a Christmas present online, which has been sort of personalised, and it arrived last night. And I hadn't really thought about it, but when I was ordering it, it's a really sweet little bunny rabbit with an embroidered jumper with her name on it. And when I was looking at the teddy bears and things like that, I just thought, no, not a teddy. And then I saw and I thought, yeah, a rabbit. But I didn't think about it. And when I opened the box and saw it, I remembered that when I was little, I had a rabbit. I had a rabbit toy. So somewhere in my unconscious, when I was looking at all the pictures, and it was just this moment of like, oh, I'll never buy this for my daughter. And it's just a moment. I didn't see it coming. And these days it's just like, oh, okay. And I honour that moment, and it's like, okay, it doesn't floor me anymore, and I don't make it into a big story in my head. It's just it's often quite a physical feeling. You know, it's just when it's like, it's a, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
there's that again.
yeah, and I just take a moment, take a breath, and actually I did. I got the little bunny out of the box, and I kind of held it, and I stroked it, and I kind of just allowed myself to really feel the sadness, as well as what an adorable bunny this is.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for, I can't wait to give it to my friend for her little girl. It's that mixture.
It's funny how that sadness changes from that just overwhelming kind of tidal wave of grief that can hit you to, like you say, just being able to sit and realize, yeah, that is that feeling of sadness, but it's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's just there, and okay, there it is, and then
it's a cute
rabbit.
It's
gone again.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, it is a very cute rabbit. So it's been just so lovely, to talk to you again. And like we said at the beginning of the call, it's kind of nuts that we don't know each other in person.
Yeah.
And when we do meet, it's like probably, we'll be like, oh, you're taller than I expected.
But that's what's so wonderful about, the internet is that there is support everywhere. There is support online, and there are, your community and my community and lots of other communities where, if you don't find your kindred spirit in one, go to another. And, there are a lot of places
do you
have input.
Do you know a lot of those? I mean, I don't know that many communities apart from yours and mine.
There are certainly a lot of bloggers out there who are writing about this and that kind of community as far as, a place to hold a conversation. And I'm hearing about slowly more in-person support groups, which there certainly weren't, when I was out there. And I'm honestly not sure I would have gone to one, even if I'd have found one, actually.
It's not for everyone.
No, I think it's much easier online to just take the support when you need it, and in the privacy of your own home.
Or on your smartphone in the bathroom at a baby shower, whenever you need it.
Whenever you need it, exactly. But it's great that I've met so many incredible women,
ditto,
online and in person. People have stepped out from behind their internet personas, and I've had the chance to meet some people in person, and it's wonderful to sit down and have a meal with somebody who truly, truly gets you.
Yeah.
And I have several people that I've met in person, and we've of course talked about the topic and then talked about a myriad of other things.
Yeah,
and
I find that the most fascinating
wonderful
conversations, because it's like, you're not going to be blindsided by the baby conversations, and
you're not waiting for those questions that you would expect from somebody that you were meeting for the first time. It's yeah. It's a huge world and such a small world, and I love that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. So I've been speaking with Lisa Manterfield, who's the author and the founder of Life Without Baby, and that's lifewithoutbaby.com. Yes.
That's
correct. Your new book, which is the pulling together of all of your experience and also the things you've learned from women in your community as well, will be coming out next spring as a Kindle book, but also it sounds like as a physical book as well, which will be fantastic.
Physical. Which I love.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to holding it in my hand, actually, and I wish you great success also for your novel. I can't wait to see how that does, and I quite like young adult fiction. It's quite good fun to read.
It's very good fun.
Yeah.
It's very good fun, and not always so light. I mean, there are some really incredible novels out there, dealing with some issues that perhaps adult fiction wouldn't deal with as well.
So I look forward to that as well.
Watch this space.
Thank you so much. And thanks for all your tips, Jody, about coping with Christmas. And I hope you have a lovely one. And I wish your mum safe travels.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure as always talking to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.